Let's have it.
Well, hello. I'm trying to start, I hope you don't mind, Antoine, I'm trying to start on a little bit of a high note emotionally, because this topic today, boy, the more I think about it, the more, I can't imagine, okay, number one, I'm a white person, I cannot completely fathom what our topic today is doing to our brothers and sisters and women in general, because this affects all kinds of folks. The topic is DEI, okay, which diversity, equity, inclusion. Okay, look out those words, not bad words, right? And they got put together for a good reason, and that ended up becoming a weaponized acronym. If you remember, it's been referred to as DIE instead of DEI. We will die by DEI. So some pundit somewhere thought they were super duper witty and came up with that. And unfortunately, super duper witty things like that have a tendency to get glommed onto by a majority of people that don't even understand what they're talking about. In fact, I know there was an interesting interview on the street with folks at a convention, and they were asked point blank, do you know what DEI stands for? And 80%, if not more, almost 100% of the people at least that were interviewed. You don't see the people that were, got it on track. So I know it wasn't a pure sample pool, all that good stuff, but so many of those people had no clue what DEI even was. And if they did know some of the words, they really didn't understand what it meant. And the fact that that is the case was evidenced to me just last night. We're doing this at the end of March, and just last night my daughter came in to talk to me. Oh, and by the way, I'm Raul Brush. And you are, sir?
Antoine Holman Sr.
Oh, yeah, I remember you now. We've done a couple of recordings together, haven't we, man? I kind of remember something once in a while.
Yeah,
something, right? We do this thing called Coming Together, okay? It's a frame of reference, if you want to hold, frame of reference coming together, okay? So, hence this discussion today. But my daughter, came into me, and we were both kind of upset because I had a storage shed broken into, lost a bunch of my Star Trek stuff, okay? Star Trek stuff. My goodness, when you lose your Star Trek stuff, as a Trekkie, that's painful, all right? But not nearly as painful as what we're talking about today. She came in, both of us are upset because this just happened, and she came in a little bit into the program last night of the World Championships for the USA team in skating. My wife and daughter are really into skating. And she talked about how there was this piece that was devoted to the folks that were in the accident where, 67 people, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood, 60 passengers, 4 crew members on Airline's Flight 5342 from Wichita. It collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter with 3 soldiers on board. They were practicing emergency evacuation routes that would be used to ferry out key government officials in an emergency. Key government officials, right? So they're doing something to practice for situations that would save our world leaders if there were an emergency of some sort, with this team of people. And the thing that was so poignant about it was the team of people that were killed in the crash that were on the United Airlines flight. They were like young skaters, like up-and-coming kids that were being trained in, being the next generation, if you will, of skaters that were going to be on teams. Moms and dads of, skating families and coaches. So, folks that were, it was a significant part of the the U.S. team, figure skating team. Now, you might not care about skate. I get that, all right? What I care about, because I'm not a huge skating fan either, I watch some of them and go, oh my God, how do they do that? Kind of thing. But I'm not like, gotta see it tonight kind of person. Star Trek, yes, that no. But they turned it into a weaponization thing right away. So if you remember, there was very little, grievances, condolences to the family. A few, I'll give that, there were a few, okay? But what really became the capital end project of the whole deal was to use it as a weapon against folks that are for and have supported DEI. Assuming, without any information really, in terms of what the congressional investigation found, without any information about what really was at the root cause of this. Was it just human error? It turns out it was preventable, but to pin it on DEI, to say because we've been bringing in people into air traffic control roles, military roles, pilot roles in general, that have been given those jobs because of DEI provisions. And interestingly enough, one of the few people that might have had some benefit from that was the pilot of the Black Hawk helicopter. Okay, well, it turns out that that was a woman. Okay, so that ought to be some cause of alarm for women in general, that, one of the few things they could find that might have something to do with the error. But even that, they don't really have that definitive answer either. So herein lies the rub, and we'll be discussing today, and it's going to have to be more than just today, I think, because there's so much in this that gets me riled up, and I know it gets my brother Antoine riled up. Is this whole process, right, of finding ways to make the ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are a way to make our democracy, our representation, our democratic republic, truly a democracy and truly representative, which is what it's supposed to be. We're not just a democracy, we are a democratic republic, which means we have people, the people, that elect representatives to then go into Congress, go into Senate, become the president, and represent them, okay? So it's not necessarily just the people, but we have a right, and the people that we elect have a responsibility to fulfill their role as representatives of the entire constituency that they represent. So when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you have to be talking about programs that are trying, which is if you just, people get outside of bubbles, okay? Encourage friends of yours that are in bubbles that don't really understand the significance and importance and sanctity, I'll say it, sanctity of treating and finding ways for all creatures of God Almighty to be treated with equity, inclusion, and to have that sense of we are all one family of human beings, one race of human beings, and as such we all ought to have the same opportunities in this land of opportunity. We ought to, because that's what America's built on. Give me your tired, your poor, your wretched refuse, yearning to be free. It's on our Statue of Liberty, for God's sakes. That's our Italian ancestors, our Jewish ancestors, our Irish ancestors, our English ancestors, white people. You want to be on the white bandwagon? They all got in here under the same deal. But now today, if you're a person of color, if you're a woman, and you have been benefiting from something, some laws, some regulations, some legislation that was attempting to correct some of that, it's being systematically destroyed, being systematically dismantled. And that's my treatise, man. That's my thing. Sorry, I'm just going on and on because this gets my wood fired up.
Yeah, man. Of course, when we talk about the weaponization of DEI, man, it's to stir misinformation and racial fear, is to scapegoat, it is to rob people of color of opportunities, is to divide the country. Man, just since then, white supremacists, white ring conservatives, they have and are continually portraying DEI initiatives as some kind of radical or dangerous ideology, instead of, they intentionally distort the purpose of DEI. They, instead of acknowledging it as the framework to correct historical and systematic injustices, they frame it as this threat to traditional values or the merits-based system. And, they continuously mischaracterize DEI to ignite fear, especially among, like, say, white people. They try to tell them, hey, you're losing power, you're being replaced, and they keep echoing this thing since then, even until now. But now, that same language is now being cloaked in political language like reverse racism, woke culture, or they critical race theory. By doing this, these groups, they weaponize DEI as a cultural scapegoat, man. They scapegoat DEI for everything. They redirect the blame of societal issues, away from the systemic issues, and put them on marginalized communities seeking equality. Of course, that old adage is like, hey, when you call out a issue, you become the problem, and that's an age-old way of doing things. And when talking about this information, man, this misinformation, it's powerful because it operates under the illusion of fairness. Because if you listen to like J.D. Vance, man, he is kind of scary to me because, man, he can make a bad thing sound really good, and I'd be like, I hope people got that, and of course it's like just going off there. But when conservatives claim that DEI promotes hiring based on identity instead of merit, they ignored the historic and ongoing exclusion of people of color from leadership, education, economic opportunities. It creates this false equivalence between efforts to diversify institutions and discrimination against white people, confusing thing. They try to confuse it, man. That's all it's about. That word salad, that word play, that confusion. And of course, if a lot of people aren't aware of what's really going on, man, they'll easily get swept up in a bunch of misinformation.
Right.
And like in here in recent years, man, these conservatives, and now you got these these right-wing conservatives, these social media influencers. They've gone so far as to blame DEI on catastrophic events, like you were just talking about the plane crash that killed those athletes, those young athletes and their families. But they also, remember, they blamed it on they blamed DEI on the California wildfires on DEI. Even military or economic downturns, they will blame it on DEI. And of course, this is all a part of their broader narrative to say when things go wrong, instead of addressing the real systemic failure, like deregulation, underfunding of public services, environmental neglect, DEI, it becomes the boogeyman. These claims, and they're not supported by evidence, but they are effective in redirecting, public outrage towards marginalized groups. So it's like it's easy to blame DEI on everything.
Yeah.
And of course, it's just when, like when commentators blame the plane crash on DEI, for instance, they were implying that someone was hired or promoted not because they were qualified, but because they were a black, they were a woman, they were indigenous, or of another minority. Yeah. This just continuously reinforces racial stereotypes that if a white man is not in charge of it, or if it kind of like because they are actually going along the ideology, if there's no way a person of color, male or female, is smarter or more qualified than a white male. That is what it is. And again, it's the attack on DEI. And let's just be clear, DEI really, it calls things out. Has it really done anything? I'll say it has made some progress. It was piggybacking, again, the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act. This is another stage or another step or level in that fight. But now we know that the steps have been torn down. So now they're tearing down this level or layer of calling out things, or this, they're trying to crush this as well.
Yeah.
And of course, anything that's because what we're seeing right now, anything that is going to advance people of color or give them a leg up, they're taking away the funding to do it. Like in black communities, man, there was a nonprofit group. They were giving business grants to black females. And one of those conservative lawyers, he basically sits on the steps of the Supreme Court, and he got that cast down, calling it reverse racism. And again, it's like this is the history of the country right here. When minorities start to advance or move ahead, move the needle, start to correct the narratives, some white men start to act out. It's just, the way it is. And because, again, I'll speak just for myself and maybe a lot of black men that speak, think just like me. I just want to be left alone. I want to love people. I want to, make a way for me and my family. I want to help others and lift others up. But when you do that, and when there start to be major advancements, that's when things like what we're seeing on the news start to flare up. And this is why DEI is important. It builds a more and just inclusive future, man. So that's what they want to take away.
So let's think about this too for a second. I've interviewed for jobs that I haven't gotten. I've interviewed for jobs that I have gotten. Okay. And I can tell you categorically, when I have not gotten those jobs, there's part of me that says, well, I wasn't as qualified as other people. I didn't have, the skill set that they were looking for. Just, wasn't the right time for me. Even God, just didn't see that as a place I need to go to right now. My faith gets engaged in the intellectual, the thinking that goes on. And then it turns to stinking thinking sometimes. And the stinking thinking is things like, I bet you they got a young guy. I'm older. They probably figured I'm not young enough to do this. Or I have thought, I'll fully admit, I wonder if they, had a woman in the thing. I mean, those thoughts go through my head. Shame on me. But they do. And I'm not going to sit here and try to have somebody say, oh, you're so holier than thou. I am not. Okay? I'm a human being, and I'm just as, acculturated by those kinds of thoughts, by even thoughts of, I wonder if a black person or a Latinx got that role, because they were trying to, build or push the needle the other way. I can usually rationalize that back to, well, I hope they get an opportunity and they really run with it, usually. But let's face it, guys, white guys out there, if you can tell me that you have not ever experienced a white friend of yours saying, yeah, I didn't get the job, they probably hired some black guy. Okay? Think about it for a second. You ever experienced that? Ever had that thought yourself? Okay, now, if you're going to be honest about that, you've heard it, I can't believe you haven't, or you've thought it, having a hard time believing that isn't true either with most white people, because we grow up in a racial soup. Okay, we grow up, all of us, surrounded by white folk, birds of a feather, flock together, and we think that we're the cat's meow. And we don't have enough experience with black folks or Latinx folks to know, man, there's some really damn smart, bright, cool people. They deserve jobs as much as I do. They just want to work. They just want to be treated with respect. They just want to have opportunities to show what they can do. Thankfully, Lord, thank you for have enough experiences to know that is absolutely true. That there is no difference between people based on color, religion. They're smart, bright, loving, caring, wonderful people across the human race. Country, nationalism, nothing. We are all in this battle together as human beings trying to survive. So don't give me this crap about, white guys just don't have a chance anymore because they're going to get these black people or these Hispanic people have to, or women get a job over a white guy. Baloney. Face it, you didn't get the job 90% of the time because you weren't the best candidate. You didn't get the opportunity, plain and simple, because you didn't fight for it. You didn't get the education. You didn't get the skill set. You didn't work hard enough to get the job 90% of the time. Now, are there people out there that are hiring people and looking at their quotas and saying, oh, we better make sure we give, yeah. But man, from a business sense, that doesn't make any sense. Because if you're running a business and you're hiring people based on that, you're just setting yourself up for failure as a business. You've got to have the smartest, brightest people that are available if you want to keep your business afloat. And if you're a governmental agency that needs to get an overwhelming amount of work done, or a nonprofit agency that needs to get an overwhelming amount of work done with very limited resources, you're going to get the best and the brightest. You've got to. And if you're just doing it based on something other criteria, that would be such a minute percent, because I can't say there aren't those people. But for goodness sakes, it's like using the term welfare queens. Give me a freaking break. Do you know how many instances have been proven to be true for that to be even close to being a truth comment? And it's even in those instances, there are extenuating circumstances that make it reasonable that that happened, that that person is in fact collecting multiple whatever assistances because. But there's just as many white folks that do that as there are people of color, probably more because there's, more systematic abuse amongst white people than any other folks in the country. Period. That's just true. So people, come on, just think. Please encourage your friends to think, because I suspect that the people who are listening to this are already kind of on this side of the fence. We're preaching to the choir. But we need to get out and get that word and find loving, compassionate ways to move people away from that thinking wherever possible. Because I don't think it is possible with everybody. I think some people are just so dyed-in-the-wool stupid, just plain stupid about this stuff, and are so locked into their way of thinking that you're probably wasting your breath casting pearls before swine if you try to have these kinds of discussions with them. I hate to say that, but it's, I think, just a reality. So if you're sensing that that's the equation, move on and pray for them. It's about the best I think any of us can hope to do.
Yeah, man. When it comes to DEI and, opportunities, man, of course, is constant, like we just been talking, is under attack and is being dismantled, whether it's through media rhetoric, lawsuits, legislation. Of course, the victims are people of color. Affirmative action, hiring practices, equitable education policies are always the first to go. They're always, we're seeing like they're the first to be defunded, like the Department of Education. Who benefits the most from the Department of Education? It's going to be rural and urban areas, right? But to take away education at the very core of it, and just basically like they're trying to make it to where everything starts to be funneled to these private schools, which a lot of people won't be able to get to, or a lot of people won't qualify for. It's just you're trying to cut the feet from under a whole races of people.
Right.
These these right-wing or conservative movements on their position on DEI, it's like they are like a point of no return, a zero-sum game. They're gaining things, that means we're losing things. And of course, and what that does, it just kind of promotes that racial resentment. It deepens the divides. It reinforces the myth that people of color succeed only on preferential treatment, not merit. Right. And of course, that's what they talk about, the merit system. I'll give you an example. Donald Trump's granddaughter, she was she just qualified for a junior golf tournament for like the 30 best females in the country and the 30 best males in the country. Now, on a national scale, Donald Trump's granddaughter, she, out of all these high school golfers, she ranked 2,300, whatever, but she made the top 30 somehow. And so we I'm going to say, that's all I'm going to say about that. But, we talk about, how DEI takes away opportunities, man, when they say we only make it by preferential treatment. This tactic, it has a psychological effect on people as well, like Black professionals, Black students, leaders. We are constantly having to defend our worth. We constantly have to defend our legitimacy, or we constantly have to defend that. And I fear for the younger generation or people that have a weaker spirit, because they're going to be constantly accused of being diversity hires or quotas. And, and it's just, this thing can beat down on a person, and it starts to make them doubt themselves, and these
make them angry.
These microaggressions and systemic things that they're doing serve to discourage future generations from pursuing opportunities where they might be most needed, whether it's law, medicine, education, corporate leadership. The result of this social climate where people of color are constantly forced to defend themselves, their presence, and our worth.
Right.
But we're now about to be shut out of every possible opportunity. And that's where, we need the allyship. We need people to stand up. We need people to really just open their eyes to this thing. And of course, like I say, they call you woke, or they're going to say revert. They're going to use some form of reverse racism. It's been in their favor for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
thing has been argued for hundreds of years. But now, again, major advancements are starting to be made. But here we are again with this thing.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, Black people don't start this mess. This mess has just been brewing for years and generations. But however, since 2016, it has now been made okay to say you're racist. It's been made okay to say some of the most hideous things that are coming out of people's mouths right now. And it's a sad thing. Of course, we are to be protecting diversity, equity, and inclusion in all the institutions pertaining to life, the justice system, education, the medical field, all these things, and the sad part is, why they demonize DEI, it just it'll confuse a well-intended person, and it'll just confuse them. If they are, like you mentioned, if a person is stuck in their news bubble, they won't really get what diversity, equity, inclusion is all about. And we have to fight for it. It robs us of this attack on DEI is robbing this country of some very significant growth in the world. The country itself is not falling behind because of DEI. Is not falling behind because of DEI. Is falling behind because we continuously, some of the best people for a job will never get that job now, or they won't even be considered. And that's where, we have to open our eyes and say, hey, we can no longer allow these systemic and systematic injustices to keep going. We have to really boldly stand up and talk to the lie. And now, of course, it's hard to argue against a lie or against the way a person feels. It's hard to. You can simply state the truth and keep stating it. And again, and it's like, and we better be able to back it up with fact, with actual fact. Because again, you can talk to a person and maybe change their way, but when you're talking to a group of people, like say 75 million people, who voted in this past election for the current situation, it's going to be hard to. And of course now, and like we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, the sad part is a lot of people are seeing things go horribly wrong, even with the mishandling of, what happened with this Signal app thing, where they actually, put attack plans in a text. Is that DEI? Wasn't a Black person on the call. Tulsi Gabbard, she was on the call. Are they not calling that a DEI thing now? Yeah. So they pick and choose where they want to weaponize it and demonize it. And but I tell you, it's just we get to a point where we really have to just really stand, talk, and be bold about this subject.
And there you have it, folks. Round one of our passionate discussion on DEI: diversity, equity, inclusion. Look up those 3 words. Look them up so that when you're talking with a friend of yours that maybe is, been taken down that path, look up those words so that you know exactly what they mean. You know why they've been categorized in that way. And try to look up some of the actual examples of diversity, equity, and inclusion being used. Who does it cover? Get some knowledge underneath your, in your head to be able to use. It's like, my theater background, we rehearse. We rehearse shows. We first gather as a cast. We rehearse for 6 to 8 weeks before we ever pull the curtain. Because we know when we pull the curtain, something's going to happen on that stage, and something's going to happen out in that audience area, and we hope it's going to be good. So rehearse. Get your lines down, right? Get the ability to be able to talk intelligently about it and compassionately, because we're not just looking to argue people intellectually into this. But, I keep thinking of statements like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's been around forever. And this is exactly what's going on right now. This is the real battle going on. It's not what we know, it's who we know that's going to end up getting people their jobs. It's going to end up getting their positions of power. That's exactly what's happening with every political administration since, I don't know when. The people that get appointed for the cabinets that make the big decisions that affect you and I are appointed because of who they know, right? And
if they don't like it, they're going to remove you.
Yep, real quickly.
The black president or chancellor of Harvard University, as well as the white female chancellor of Penn University. They used DEI, they used anti-Semitic whatever to remove those women, and that's all it was.
So, next time we continue with our discussion, folks. My name is Raul. That's the Raul LaBreche.
Raul the Fresh LaBreche.
And you, young man, are
Antoine Holman Sr.
And we are coming together here on Frame of Reference, and we hope that you will comment. We will get in the discussion as well. Go to www.forsauk.com and leave a comment. Please make it something that we can discuss instead of something that just says, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah. I mean, voice your concerns, voice the things that happened to you, the real experiences, that's fine. But, let's have a discussion about it, right? Let's try to figure out, hey, what's really going on, okay? All right, till next time. Amen. See you then.
Amen.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.